Dave says, what is your recommended approach to competition day nutrition? And Claire says, any advice on what to eat in the week leading up to a competition and the day of the competition itself? Thanks for the question, guys. The first thing is a lot of people tend to waste months or years of training, of hard training and of smart preparation because they don't get their nutrition right on competition day. It's such an easy low-hanging fruit that you can pick to be able to maximize your performance and actually show off the impact and the results of your hard labor in training. So a really easy thing to do to maximize your performance. The big overriding thing is you don't want to try anything new. So you know how your body responds to certain eating patterns and certain food types. So don't do anything radically different during a competition. However, if you can follow some of the advice and guidelines I'm about to throw at you, in your training, practice this in training in the lead up to the competition. So if you are doing something new, at least you've practiced it and tried it and you know how your body is going to respond. Trying to maximize your performance on game day is one of the few times when we are eating, hydrating, fueling our body for a short-term gain, for a short-term improvement in performance. For the rest of the time, outside of a competition setting, you should be eating, yes, for your performance, but to help to promote recovery and for long-term health. So 90% of your nutrition is geared towards longevity. Competition day nutrition is geared towards short-term performance. Let's start with hydration. So obviously very important that you are getting enough water so you are well hydrated. It will improve your performance to a great degree. Even a couple of percent worth of dehydration, a couple of percent below what your total body water should be is going to have a 5 to 10% impact in the negative on your performance levels. So hydration, very important. But if you wait until the day before the event or the event itself to get hydrated, you've left it too long. So you need to be hydrating well for the week leading up to the competition because our bodies adapt to higher or lower hydration levels and change the hormone levels in the body based on how much fluid you have coming in, which is going to cause a lot of dehydration on a competition event if you're dehydrated in the week leading up to it, because your body just won't be able to take on that water. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're well hydrated leading up to the competition. You want to be increasing your carbohydrates on the day before. So a day prior to the competition, even 2 days prior to the competition, increase the amount of slow release starchy carbohydrates. So this does something very important. We basically want to have as much glycogen in our body as possible. Now, this is just the way that our body stores sugar, and this can be stored in the muscles, but also in the liver. So we want to make sure that our stocks of glycogen are as full as possible. Think about this like charging your battery. You want to have those batteries fully charged, ready for the competition, because then during the competition, we get these oscillations, these ups and downs, these peaks and troughs in your blood sugar levels. And if our battery is charged, we can use that battery to be able to take sugar out of the blood, put sugar back into the blood to be able to fuel muscle contractions to therefore increase our performance. So a day or 2 days before, 24 to 48 hours, start to have a little bit more slow release carbohydrates, things like sweet potatoes, root vegetables, these sort of things, which are not going to cause major spikes in blood sugar, but will help to get some more of this hepatic glycogen, which is the glycogen in the liver, but also the glycogen stored in the muscles, start to increase the levels there. On competition day itself, breakfast is probably going to be your only true full meal. So try and have a big breakfast. A good balance of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. You won't be consuming a lot of fat during the event itself, during the competition day. So make sure you have these 3 macronutrients present in breakfast. If you've got an early start, so the events are early, you're going to need to cut this down and focus more on your food in between events, which I'll touch on in a moment. But if you're going to be having breakfast, then you have to go and register, and there's maybe a couple of hours before your first event. Try and get a substantial meal in for breakfast. Again, it'll help to increase and top up those glycogen stores in the liver and in the muscles. Let's touch now on post-exercise nutrition. So you've just finished your event. What should you be doing? Well, immediately after the event, you're in this window where your body is highly receptive to being able to take sugar, turn it into glycogen and store it in the body. So immediately after you finish the event, straight away, you should be consuming about 60 grams of a pretty pure form of glucose. So you can buy a product which is basically just a powdered sugar, 100% carbohydrates. What that will do is cause a spike in your insulin levels. Now, ordinarily, this is not a good thing. You don't normally want your insulin levels to spike, because what that does is it lays down this energy that you've got coming in this case, the sugar, the carbohydrates, it lays that down and stores it as body fat. So insulin increases the storage of fat in your body. However, if you're doing this immediately post-event, what it's going to do is use this insulin spike and actually increase the uptake of the sugar into the liver and into the muscles, which again is where we want them to recharge that battery to be able to then perform in future events on the same day or on the same weekend. So straight away, 60 grams of glucose and about 30 grams of a whey protein isolate. This is just going to help with your immediate muscle repair and recovery by increasing protein synthesis, which is basically how we help to make sure that we're not exercising over the event, over the weekend, with too much damage to our muscles. We're at least starting to promote a return of strength, starting to repair those muscles themselves. So that's what you should be doing post-event, after every event. This, of course, is also what you should be doing after training, not just during a competition itself, but during your training in the lead up to that competition. Let's talk about what you should be doing in between events in terms of actual real food as opposed to your post-exercise nutrition. During a competition, most people are not hungry, and a lot of people can go a whole day and not eat at all. Now, of course, this is a terrible idea because you don't have that glycogen then in your body to be able to fuel muscle contractions. So we need to graze on small amounts of food. The reason you don't feel hungry, in your nervous system, you've basically got your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, you've probably heard of these called fight or flight, which is your sympathetic. Maybe you haven't heard of the colloquial name for your parasympathetic, but that's rest and digest. So we have one part of the nervous system, and if that part of the nervous system is active and fired up, then you're going to be performing well at a high level. That's your fight or flight. The hormone levels are making sure that you're able to perform at a high level. Then the rest and digest, that would be when you are not performing at a high level and you're able to help to promote your recovery and to be able to digest food. Now, these can work to a degree at the same time, but in a large part, it's either one or the other. So when you're competing, when you're in the middle of an event, you want to be sympathetic. You want to be fired up in that fight or flight. And what that means is if you're in that anxious fight or flight state all day, all competition, all weekend, you're not going to be able to digest food well. And that's why when you're about to go into a competition that means something to you, even if you're well hydrated, you tend to get a dry mouth because you're in this fight or flight response. And what that does is sucks the blood flow away from the parts of your body involved in digestion. And of course, producing saliva in your mouth is the first step in digestion. So if you have a dry mouth, it tells you that you're in that sympathetic state. So you're not going to want to feel like eating during the competition in between the events, but you have to. So a really good way to do this is to look at the environment and try and reduce the barrier to entry to actually be eating. So firstly, what should you be having? Well, not too much fats because this takes a long time to digest. And again, if we're in this sympathetic nervous system activation for a lot of the competition, you're not going to want food which is hard to digest. So simple foods like fruits, things that feel palatable, foods that aren't super heavy is a good general guide for what you should be eating. Now, again, as I'm talking about, we need to try and modify our environment to reduce the barrier to entry for this. And what this means is, let's say you do have fruit, choose fruit that you like, or cut fruit into small pieces so you don't have this barrier of having to cut up the fruit or eating a whole apple. If it's in small pieces, you can eat it without even thinking about it. In the same token, if you're having something like sweet potato, make sure it's really well cooked, maybe small cubes, or mash the sweet potato so it's very easy for you to get it in without even thinking about it. If you're having nuts, again, not too much fat, but small nuts makes it very easy just to snack on. You want to try and be as mindless as you can with the eating during a competition, because if you have to think about it, you're probably not going to do it. So these are my general guidelines. Make sure you're well hydrated. Make sure that what you've done in the days leading up to the competition is good from a hydration point of view, but also getting a little bit more complex carbohydrates into what you're doing. During the competition itself, a good breakfast. We didn't talk about dinner, but a really good dinner at the end of the day if you're competing again the following day. And then after the event, plenty of glucose, about 60 grams worth of glucose, 30 grams of a whey protein isolate, and then snacking consistently throughout the day. If you have a big break between events, you can have a larger full meal. If not, just lots of small snacks. Making sure that you're not eating within about 45 minutes of an event. And if you're going to have a big meal, I wouldn't do that within 2 hours of the event. Again, the part of your nervous system which is responsible for digesting food and getting the energy and nutrients out is the opposite of the one which is involved in the competition itself, in the events themselves. So work hard on that balance.